Welcome to another episode of Live with Laura. I'm your host, Laura Hediger, and today we are going to talk about a topic that is very personal to me. It is visual impairment. My dad is an optometrist, and actually a little about me, I don't see as well as other people do. In fact, when I was about 2.5 years old, my mom looked at me one day and realized that my eye was completely turning in. I wore an eye patch for a few years. I was first fitted with glasses at 2.5 years old, and I think my first pair of contacts around 5 or 6. My daughter, Ella, is 2 years old almost, and she is extremely farsighted. I share all of those details to get us into the conversation because there are a lot of people around us who just see the world differently. And thank goodness there's a local nonprofit dedicated to helping kids and specifically families navigate the world around them when they don't see as well as everyone else. Two ladies who are here with me today who know all about this organization are across from me. I am happy to have Ann Celia with us, the Director of Community Engagement for DGCKids, and also Julie Dernbeck, I said it correctly, who is a board member with DGCKids. Ladies, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
I'm very excited to be here.
So first off, what is DGCKids?
DGCKids is like you said, a local organization here in St. Louis that serves kids with visual impairment birth all the way through high school graduation, as well as their families. Visual impairment in kids is very rare, like probably 1%. So when we talk about having that organization here in St. Louis, it's a pretty big deal. There are 3 organizations across the entire state of Missouri that focus solely on kids with visual impairment. So.
And I'm amazed because the center is on Big Bend, right there in Richmond Heights.
It is, yeah.
Friends, you've probably been by it 1,000 times, and you've probably seen the sign. Going inside it, I was in there a couple weeks ago. It's a really, really special place.
It's a very beautiful building, and I love that you're calling out the sign too, because we just went through a brand refresh in January. So we have always been known as Delta Gamma Center for Children with Visual Impairments, which is a very long name. So we are working. Julie and I keep practicing DGCKids. Make sure we remember to do it right. But the sign was a big part of kind of kicking that off as well. So we have a new sign. If you do drive by Big Bend, we also have a beautiful mural that one of the dads of one of our clients painted for us. So it's very fun. It's very happy. But you're right. Inside is everything that's designed for kids with visual impairment. So it's an old warehouse, and it was completely gutted and designed around the needs of kids with visual impairment. So you see very high contrast flooring. You see a lot of tactile elements. You see a lot of bright and shiny things to help kids see and navigate where they need to go. And then there's tons of just different features and activities and therapeutic things that we have in there as well.
And Julie, you have been associated with DGCKids for about 5.5 years now. Please tell me how you originally found them.
Yeah, so through an ophthalmologist, when my daughter was a baby, recognized that she kind of had a few different visual problems going on that needed some specialized attention, and they were quick to let us know about DGCKids, and so we became associated in the early intervention program, which is really where most people are kind of starting off with DGCKids, and really got to experience that, as you mentioned before. It is the family. They're there to support and help you help your child navigate through all the steps and have the right toys and enrichment and make sure that things are, as you said, able to be visualized by the child regardless of what is going on with them. So having that specialized resource at a early age, and if you're doing the math, that is during the pandemic. They helped navigate us, and I'm sure many other families, through a time in which accessing healthcare and accessing services was really challenging. challenging. And so it was just a really cool way that, you didn't have to feel like you were on this island, that you had these very highly trained and specialized team members. But it even not just the direct service providers, everyone in the office knew who you were, knew kind of, okay, they're coming into the center for this particular thing. As Anne mentioned, the center has just so many different specialized rooms. We're a big fan of the light room in our family.
You're not alone.
But the motor room and all the other different aspects really allows you to kind of have experiences. And, one other thing that most people don't necessarily totally put together is that when your visual system's not properly functioning, that also plays into the way your vestibular system, how you experience movement and those kinds of things. And so the motor room was really, really huge in kind of getting all those systems to work together. We kind of take for granted that those things just happen. But when they're not happening, having people who really know the right thing to do to get everything kind of working together, we feel so grateful at this point, like you said, 5.5 years in, to go, oh my gosh, we never thought we were going to be here when we were at that point. And definitely owing that, so much of that, to DGC Kids.
And the three of us are all moms. Many of the people watching and listening right now are moms. And it's really hard in those early years before they can communicate with us with words to even know something's wrong. And that was something that I heard from so many viewers in sharing my daughter's story. Well, how did you know? How did you know? And for me, it started at daycare. They did just a simple test with a camera, and they said, it looks like your daughter is just tracking things a little differently. Got into the pediatric ophthalmologist, and I think you saw that segment, and that's how we connected. And my dad's an optometrist. It is their job to give the diagnosis. But then it is kind of like, I have this diagnosis that could be life-altering. What do I do now? So I think it's amazing that your ophthalmologist said, well, actually, there is this place in town that's really, really good at it. And especially during such a sensitive time as the pandemic. I'm sure you instantly felt like, oh my goodness, I can put some plans in place.
Yeah, I think it really helps you with the what now, right? So they can help you on the medical side of things, but I'm an occupational therapist by background. And so knowing what we were going to do functionally was very important to me, and being able to say, okay, I'm seeing these things, like you said, I'm seeing that, this was when she was a baby. So I'm seeing that she's not interacting with her toys in the same way. So I know something's happening and that kind of thing. And to kind of be like, okay, we have an answer, but now we need an action. And having a team that's so specialized and ready, as you mentioned, it's not a large group of people, right? And so you don't have these, abundant, okay, here's the 10 places you're going to go, but to have a place that's so good at it and that you immediately have confidence that they're going to help, not only my child, but help me navigate what I should do, what I should advocate for, all of those things, and really just have that early enrichment and early intervention. I mean, there's so much research that supports that, we want to support kids as early as possible. And like you said, kind of getting those screenings or getting that opportunity to intervene before the child is saying, I can't see anything. Right. Or before they're having problems way down the line. We're in, the school age now, and really, it's like, oh, well, we dealt with the problems that we needed to deal with early on so that we can be successful now.
And that's what's so interesting when we're talking about children who are born visually impaired. They don't know any different. Where with my dad as an optometrist, he'll tell me stories about some of his patients, not names. We're not breaking HIPAA. Don't worry about that. But it's one thing as an adult to be diagnosed with something where you do start to slowly lose your vision or things become fuzzy as we age, because you had that base of, this is how I could see the world versus this is how I'm now seeing it. But as a child, if this is all you've known,
Yep.
it is amazing that there are so many resources out there.
Well, and I think that's exactly right. Like relearning the world without vision, you already understand the concepts. You already know what everything is. It is still really hard. But when you think about babies and everything they learn just by watching, it just blows your mind as to, and one of the examples I always use is, how do you explain the moon to a 2-year-old that can't see the moon, right? It just stops you for a moment. So being very intentional, and like Julia's saying, having the experts that know, here's how you teach these concepts, here's how you help kids learn without sight or without really good sight. And I think that's another piece we always talk about too, that there's a misconception that if you have a visual impairment, you have no vision. And it's a spectrum. There are kids that have no vision. There's kids that may have light perception. They can tell the difference between light and dark. And then there's some that can see this room, but it's very fuzzy, and it's like, here's some green, and here's some white, and here's some brown. There's not definition to it. So really figuring out, and I think that's where our specialists come in too. We have teachers of the visually impaired, and they do assessments, and they're not doing medical assessments. They're doing assessments on function. How do they see? How do they function? What are they using their vision for? And that's incredibly helpful to figure out, how do you help the kids learn these different things? You have to know what they can do and what they can see.
And I'm so glad you mentioned the different types of visual impairment, because I think, as you mentioned, if it just impacts 1% of the population to this level, of course, everyone's not going to know the right terminology. We can't assume that. That wouldn't be fair to everyone else. Are there certain, though, names that we should be thinking of?
Well, so I think it's funny that you say it that way. We should not assume regular people that aren't familiar with it understand what the definitions are, what the names are. But there's inconsistencies in the professional world. Like there's a ton of different definitions of what is a visual impairment. The one that DGCKids uses is closest to Department of Education. So the Federal Department of Education uses a definition that's not medical. It really is looking at an impairment in vision that impacts daily living and that cannot be corrected. So that would be a difference. I've had laser surgery, which was amazing. But before that, I was legally blind without my glasses. I wasn't legally blind, though, because I could put glasses on and see just fine. So for our kiddos, they might be wearing glasses, but even with the glasses, they're still not seeing very well. And so that's when we determined this is what we're calling a visual impairment. So
I think that kind of is a good, I guess, though, point for people to jump off is you just don't want to make assumptions. I mean, you don't want to make assumptions of what someone can or cannot see, can or cannot do. You want to let, as much as possible, especially as the children get older, let them be the one who leads that and that kind of thing. And I think that's another thing that I really like, knowing as we get older, that DGCKids really does empower the kids as they get older to be their own advocates and to navigate the world in a lot of different ways. So, when you talk about a baby or an infant or a small child, right, they're not navigating nearly as many environments and things. But as we get older, our world gets bigger. And so I love that kids can grow with DGCKids and continue to do that. But I think that one thing that, was really empowering to us early on was they weren't ever going to limit where my child was going to end up. You'll notice that, especially if you navigate the medical world, sometimes people will kind of say, well, here's what to expect and here's the limit for this child. And I really, really, what resonated with me as a mom is they were like, no one has a crystal ball. Let's work. Let's address the things we know are a problem. and those kind of things, and some of the visual disorders aren't necessarily acuity or kind of that fuzziness based. It's more of functional use of vision, and those kind of things. So, early on it was like, we were getting the like, well, maybe you're not going to be able to, read and things like that, and think about those limitations. And, Delta, the DGC Kids team was very quick to basically be like, we don't know that, and challenge that assumption. And so I think that's something. And as an OT myself, I've always kind of been of the mindset of, anyone with any type of disability, you don't want to start with your own assumptions. You want to let them lead, and let that conversation be guided by, kind of just letting things be, and not kind of making assumptions or having to put everything in a box or with a name too.
I think this makes a good point to hit our first pause, but also to encourage you to share this episode with anyone who you might know who is visually impaired, who has a family member who is visually impaired, even a younger mom, just so they know what different things are out there, because I'm sure when you were pregnant, you were not expecting that diagnosis. I wasn't when I was pregnant. And it's just amazing that we live in an area and a time where there are such good resources. And I'm so lucky that I was able to see the DGC Kids Center there on Big Bend, I want to say Hanley, on Big Bend. So we are going to get into more of what they do and just the cool programs, the trips they take, which I'm still amazed that you guys do this, because I would never be able to give up that amount of control, I think. Really cool things. We're here with Ann and Julie with DGC Kids. We'll be right back with more Live with Laura. We are thrilled to have you along on this Thursday. This is Live with Laura. I'm your host, Laura Hediger, and I am joined by Ann and Julie, both here today talking about DGC Kids. And something that I heard over and over and over after I told people and viewers about my daughter's diagnosis was, but how? How did you find that out with the vision screening? Because at the time, she was 12 months old. Obviously, she couldn't go to my dad's practice and see the big E at the top and go through all the letters, or do the circles where one side's green and one side's red, and you tell which one looks darker. We've all had those vision tests. So what exactly is the screening, especially for those little ones who can't tell you these things? You're right. How do kids tell you that what they see isn't right when that's what they've always seen and they can't talk? So being able to find ways to do that is incredibly important. DGC Kids, obviously our mission is around kids with visual impairment, but we also have a small outreach program that does do vision screenings. We're not identifying kids with visual impairment, we're identifying kids that need glasses. But because of the work we do, we know how incredibly important vision is to development. So it's kind of our way to give back a little bit. So we really focus on childcare centers and daycares that have the highest need. So whether that is lack of access because of their low-income populations, whether they're rural, and then also kids with special needs who just have more difficulty explaining or talking about what they see. But we screen 6 months to 6 years old. We go on site there. It looks like a giant viewfinder, and we just take a little picture of their eyes. And then we're able to give parents kind of that next step update on things look great, or you might want to look into this. Here are some eye doctors we would recommend. But it is a huge difference for people to have that knowledge. And I think both of you know more than that, or more about that than I do. But we obviously have talked to some of the child care center directors and things, and they can see a huge difference too. Kids that were kind of like rolling around and not paying attention during story time, weren't doing their numbers or their letters, get a pair of glasses and they walk in that room and they own the room and they're paying attention, they're asking questions, and they're really involved. And that's what I got once my daughter had the right glasses put on her for the first time. It was pretty emotional for me because I thought, I mean, at the time she had just turned 1 and she didn't want anyone messing with anything because she's 1 years old. And once she got him on, it was just, she was happy. There was never any reaching. And I'm asked all the time, well, why does she keep them? How do you get her to keep them on? I'm like, because she can see a whole lot better with them. That's why she keeps them on. And I think it's so cool that you do bring families in because I had this experience. I never remember a day in my life where I didn't wear glasses, where I didn't wear contacts. Though I'm not legally blind, I can't drive a car if I don't have some type of corrective thing over my eyes. So this is all I've known. But Julie, for you, I'm sure when you get that diagnosis of your little baby, if you aren't familiar with it, that can be pretty scary to start this journey.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point because glasses are part of that for a lot of people. And I, too, remember the day we got glasses and putting them on her face and this little smile. Like, it was like, she was like, that's what you look like.
Yes. Yes.
And I was like, oh my gosh, it was very emotional for me to be like, you can actually, that's such thing as, as a parent when they're babies is that ability to interact and things. And that's another, thing that DGC Kids helps with is parents just understand, okay, this is what we can maybe get to from a corrected standpoint, but here are the other ways that we're going to help them be able to see you and interact, be able to, even just, people don't think about it, but like some children benefit from lipstick on the mouth so that they can see your mouth move more and things like that. Not a big lipstick wearer, but, at that time I was like, sure. Let's do anything, so that she could see and be able to then learn to mimic those movements and things like that. But yeah, in the beginning, things can be so overwhelming. And so it really, it's that moment of kind of, okay, what are we going to do, and not needing to be the expert. As I mentioned, I'm an OT, but sometimes, even if you come with a medical background, you don't want to be your child's therapist or doctor or whatever, or nurse. You want to let other people who have that objective viewpoint be able to guide you and tell you what's something to worry about, what's not, what's something that, would really benefit. We always laughed because our OT would come in and she always had her bag of things, and our older child would always be like, what are we doing today? And things, because they make it so interactive and so much a full family experience, so that you aren't just getting the benefit of when they're physically with you, but you also can, you learn how to help your child best in that moment in time, because anything in development is just a moment in time, right? And so that's why it's nice to kind of have that support over a time period so that you really can kind of, okay, that might have been what we needed to do 6 months ago, but we're making progress. And I think that's the biggest thing that really as a parent helps you is to see that progress, to see that moment where they are interacting with things differently because now the glasses help them see differently, or, taking those first steps and stuff. It feels and it hits a little different when you just didn't know what that was going to look like.
And Julie, I'm so glad you mentioned your other child being there too, because that's something that really stuck out to me when I visited the center. When there are multiple kids and one has a different ability, sometimes so much focus in the family goes to that child. And I've seen where sometimes the other child can feel left out, or especially in this situation, it's overwhelming enough taking kids anywhere, let alone if they can't see where you are going. So maybe you're more comfortable just staying home. DGC Kids empowers the family, everyone in the family, to still go out to a park and go out to the zoo. And you guys are so intentional about that.
Yeah, so I think one example of that, again, is giving parents the support and the confidence, because it is. Like when you have little kids, like going to a pumpkin patch, can seem overwhelming.
Yes.
In general, like you gotta pack the diapers and the wipes, and do you have enough snacks? And okay, and I have this, and then somebody has to go to the bathroom now. It's easy to give up, right?
Yeah.
But if you add in additional components of, well, I don't know if the activities are going to be accessible for my kid. Are they going to be able to play? Are they going to be able to do this? Are people going to be staring at us? It's really easy to be like, I'm going to skip it. I don't want to do it, and just stay home. And that we don't want that. We want our families to feel comfortable. We want our kids to be able to do all of these things. So we'll host a pumpkin patch event that we have every year. And we invite all of our families. And it's grandmas and grandpas, it's siblings. It is just a fun day to go to the pumpkin patch. And it is, you've been.
It's so fun.
But parents then know, like, one, I'm going to be surrounded by other people like me that I've met, and they get it. I know for sure DGCKids is there. There's going to be tons of fun stuff for my kids to do. So they go, they get to include everyone, they have a blast. But the biggest part for us is that next year, if they get invited to go to the pumpkin patch by their friend or their sister, they're like, yes, let's do it. That was so much fun. We can do it. Or maybe they're inviting people. So that's really our goal, is to make sure that they're active participants in the community and they don't feel left out. They know they can do all of this, and it is for them and their families.
And you have had an experience at the pumpkin patch. What was that like for your family or other events that you've been to?
Yeah. So, I mean, as I mentioned, we were kind of coming out of the pandemic as these things started happening again. So everybody had a little bit of like, we move in public differently for a while and things like that. But for us, it really was between the pumpkin patch or when we went to the other events like ice skating and things like that, it was like it removed that worry of, my child's going to get knocked down or they're, like you said, and to this day, both of my children, we just had the ice skating event, and they're like, it's something they look forward to, every year that that this is this big thing, and now it is just really neat to see how those have become like ingrained activities for us. But like you said, early on, it gave the confidence of like, we can do this, we can do this, and those kind of things, as well as gave opportunities for both of my children to do activities that, we wouldn't necessarily have just been comfortable jumping in without that.
And that's not the only activity. You do a lot of tandem biking too with kiddos.
We do, and I think this goes back to what you were saying too, of we don't set limits on kids. And this one I think was very kid-led. We had our executive director at the time when we started this program probably 20 years ago. It was the school age program was newer to us. And so they had their first year, and then it was very much a talk to the kids. What did you think? What did you like? What do you want to do next year? And the kids, I think, had a text chain or phone calls, and they all agreed they were going to be like, we want to learn how to ride a bike. It sounds really fun. So when she asked them, every single kid told her they want to learn how to ride a bike. And we don't want to limit our kids, and we don't want to say no. So it's like, okay, let's think about it, because we have to be safe. So they did. They thought about it. They wrote a grant. They got a whole fleet of tandem bikes, and they worked with other groups, and we got enough volunteers. And so we have one of the only programs for kids, the only tandem program for kids with visual impairment in the country. And it is a sight to see. You'll get there eventually, I'm sure. But they have probably 15 or so kids that go out at a time on their tandem bikes. They have, I'm not a cyclist, so I don't know the language, but the uniforms, it's called something. But they wear them, and they ride around in Forest Park, and people just stop, and they're like, what is this? How do I get to be a part of this? And it's a wonderful program, and it is, we actually have a video on our YouTube channel that goes around Forest Park with the kids. It shows them, it does some interviews. It's very cool. But like a lot of things that DGCKids does, it's very volunteer dependent because, as you can imagine, you have to have at least one volunteer with sight on every bike. So if people are ever interested in volunteering, that is something that would be great. We'd love to have you. But again, I think it is the possibilities. Like, no one would think, well, sorry, you just can't ride a bike. That's not something that you can do. And we figure out a way, like, yeah, you can ride a bike. We just have to change it a little bit.
And I love that you literally ask the kids, because I know as a mom, and I'm sure you two do all the time, you sit there and you analyze 80,000 things every day, and you're like, okay, we should do this, and then we should do this, we should do this. And then when I turn and ask my 3-year-old, do you want to do this? No, Mommy. Why didn't I just lead with that? That would have saved me several things. If I would just ask, what do you want to do? Then that could have probably already put the plan in place.
Well, and maybe that was helpful that the kids like planned in the background, because when people want to do different things, then it's like, ooh, okay, maybe I shouldn't have asked it that way. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's really a special thing about the organization, though, is that, and it's not this assumption of we're the experts, we know what these children should do. It's allowing them to kind of have input into it, and it kind of being what they want and need it to be. I also think that that's really special, about the board. So I was asked to join the board 2 years ago, and there's a few parents on the board, and so I think that's really, really special, because not all organizations understand the importance of the input of those who have received the services. And I think that's really, really special.
We think it's really, really special too, Julie, and we're very glad that parents who are juggling a lot and are very busy are willing to do it. So very happy on our end too.
Because it's now so personal.
Yeah.
And you want that personal connection for your board members. Any nonprofit would thrive so much more that way. Let's talk about more of how it works. So I was there either on a Wednesday or Thursday around 11 o'clock, so during the school day. There weren't many kids there. I don't know what I expected walking in the door, but I'm guessing things get much busier maybe around 3 o'clock.
Usually weekends.
Okay, weekends.
Weekends are when we're the busiest.
Okay.
We do have some play groups for our younger, our 3 and unders, that are there on Tuesday. So if you ever come again, come on a Tuesday.
Okay, you got it.
Because it's, again, the babies and the toddlers, and it's everyone's favorite day because you see them coming in and out all the time. But no, weekends are definitely our busiest. Most of our kids, they're in their regular school districts during the day. So like I said, that's when we kind of shift from those intensive in-home services where we do have all of the specialists with the degrees and the credentials that have trained on vision. And so we shift from that model because when they go to school, they get all that through their school district. So we really shift and we start to work on what are those other skills, the social skills, the friendships, the independence, the being able to go out and do things. That's where we really work. And what I think is interesting too, which feeds throughout all of the ages, is that everything we do is very individualized for each kid. And that is because every kid is different. There is no cookie cutter when it comes to visual impairment. You can have 2 kids that are the exact same age with the exact same diagnosis, and they're going to see completely different, and they're going to have different experiences. For our kids, too, a lot of them are very medically complex, which means that vision might not be the only thing going on in their life. So you have those extra components into it as well. So everything we do is very tailored, very individualized. And so with our groups, again, we have lots of volunteers to make sure that every kid has the support they need, that every kid's able to engage fully, and that everyone is safe. So weekends are going to look very different depending on what they're doing and depending on what age it is. We have a preschool program, and then we have our school age program. So when you talked about some of the trips and some of the field trips and all of the things that they do, which is incredible, I think I, as a sighted adult, look at some of their trips and I'm like, ooh, I wouldn't do that. And they do. So that's always a lot of fun too.
And let's go ahead and talk about that. So we should mention that the big gala is next weekend.
It is.
Are tickets still available?
I should know that,
Well,
Laura.
hopefully not. Hopefully it's sold out. But if they are, they could go to DGCKids.org.
They could.
For more information. So there you go.
Yes.
And a portion of the money raised from this big gala that's happening at the Ameristar is going to go to these trips. And they are legit trips.
They are.
Please tell us about some of the past trips that have happened and the kids that have gone on them.
Absolutely. So I'm going to talk about trips, but first I just want to say, because you brought it up very nicely, that we do not charge for our services. Everything we do, we fundraise, we have grants, we contract, things like that. So things like the gala are huge to enable us to be able to do what we do for families. And we don't want to create any barriers whatsoever. There's some things we cannot get around. Like when we do home visits, we're traveling to them. Transportation's not an issue. When they get older, they're coming to us. So we do what we can to alleviate that, but we can't provide transportation. What we can do is make sure there's no fee involved. So again, eliminate as many barriers as we can. For the trips, again, these, like you said, they are legit trips and it is something that they work towards all year. Again, they have their individual goals. And then through the school year, at the end of the year, they have a big summer trip. And for our little ones, it might be a 2-day overnight stay here in Missouri, where they get to, I'm going to go, you haven't done them yet, so I can't look at you for help.
I was going to say, but they go out and do, didn't they do like
horseback riding?
Horseback riding.
I think they did archery. I think they also did axe throwing. They do all kinds of things. But it builds community. They get to be around other kids with a visual impairment. And we've already talked in the podcast too that it's 1% of kids. But what that actually means is that they're the only one in their school that has a visual impairment. They might be the only one in their school district with a visual impairment. So they're different at a time when it's kind of hard to be different. So having that group where you can feel very safe, very comfortable, they understand your experiences is really big. So the friendships they build and the ability to go out and have this amazing time with their friends is huge. I think they also love being able to come back after the school year and tell all their school friends what they got to do, and to feel kind of level playing field. Like, I get to do all of the fun, amazing things, and some of them have better stories than their peers. So that's fun too.
And it's independence, because if you are visually impaired, you always have to depend on something, maybe not someone, but something. And at least having the parents removed, where it is up to that child to take care of themselves and figure things out, that's really amazing.
And you're smiling because you know how hard it is as a parent
I can't
to step back.
I'm still dressing my 3-year-old, and I have no intentions of stopping anytime soon.
I bet they'll make you stop soon. They'll be like, I will not wear that.
Okay, well, we haven't hit that yet, as my son is wearing an excavator shirt right now. Friends, we are up against another break. We are speaking with Julie and Ann here today, representing DGCKids, a wonderful nonprofit located right here in St. Louis. I just think we are so lucky to live in a community in an area with such beautiful access for so many different programs. We are going to take a quick break, come back, wrap things up right here on Live with Laura. We have a few more moments together here on Live with Laura. I am sitting across from Julie, a parent of a child who has received services at DGCKids, and it was such a good experience that she has decided to join the board. And we also have Ann, who is the director of community engagement at DGCKids. And you just told me 75 years of this organization. It's a really, really big deal. As America celebrates our 250th birthday, 75 years of this. And what's amazing to me about that is 75 years ago, everything was so different. But the fact that a group of people came together and said, you know what, we need to put services in place for kiddos who see and navigate the world differently at that time, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's actually a very fun history, and we talked a little bit about the name, Delta Gamma Center for Children with Visual Impairments. The reason we had that name is because the group that founded us was a group of Delta Gamma sorority women at Washington University in 1951. And when you think about 1951, it was a big deal for women to graduate from college,
Right.
let alone found an organization that exists today.
Mm-hmm.
But also in the 50s, like you said, it was a different place. There were no services for children with visual impairments. There were no services for children with disabilities. Until they went to school, parents were really on their own. And they kind of looked at that and said, we can do better. And so the fun history, too, they sold Christmas trees, and then whatever money they raised was their budget for the year, and they hired teachers to go into homes. And that's what we do now. We have teachers that go into homes. Today, our teachers are trained in visual impairment. They are teachers of the visually impaired. We also have orientation mobility specialists. And again, these are the folks that you're talking about that made such an impact, that know so much, that can provide the guidance. And that's huge for us to be able to have those specialists to do it. We also know vision impacts all areas of development. So in addition to our vision teachers, we also have physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, and child development specialists, because whatever those kiddos need, we're going to put in place, we're going to give them to help build that foundation in those early years.
And that was definitely the case with me. As I mentioned, I wore an eye patch for 2 years. I was incredibly delayed in speech. Now, can my parents say one was the other? Maybe not definitively.
Well, they should have been wearing lipstick, apparently.
My mom is a big lipstick fan.
okay.
In fact, the icon I have for her on my phone is lipstick.
There you go.
So she was, so we're not going to blame her for that. But something that was so hard for my mom at the time was physically putting that eye patch on her daughter and saying, it's time for your eye to go night-night. And I don't remember any of that stuff. I really don't remember the very big glasses I wore at the time. But even having such a big speech delay too, that had a huge confidence thing. And I would come home from preschool and kindergarten, and my mom would ask me, did you play with anyone today? No. Now, did I? Who knows? Was I probably just being difficult? Most likely. But what I think is amazing about your organization is that you do bring kids together who are different in other settings to a place where you're all the same. And how special is that? And the friendships and the confidence that they build. And Julie, I'm sure you've noticed that firsthand.
Yes, and I think, like I said, I have an occupational therapy background. So, the disability community is near and dear to me at all stages of life. And I think, the biggest thing that, I think sometimes people don't know how to navigate, no matter what type of disability, is, approaching that person or how to approach that person and things like that. And, in today's day and age, we talk a lot about inclusion. And inclusion doesn't mean like, oh, go you, but you're over here. It means really being in and together, and that kind of thing, and being at every table, every space. And as a kid, that means being included in school activities, being included outside of school. And, as a parent, of both of my children, and, we go to a school where there are kids of different abilities in their school. And I mean, every single birthday party, I'm like, everybody's invited, because if that parent needs to make an adaptation, they will do that. Give them that opportunity. Let those children be included in what they can be included in, and let them navigate their world without making assumptions about them, and those kind of things. At this point, because of all the wonderful work, my daughter is able to participate in so much in life and things like that. But I think that's something that I see as both, a parent as well as an occupational therapist, that I think that's the next stage of inclusion for us, is not just awareness. We just are moving out of Autism Awareness Month and things like that. It's not just awareness, it's inclusion. inclusion. It's allowing that space, at Delta Gamma, DGC Kids. I did it. I knew I would. DGC Kids events, having a space that's not as loud, that's, sensory friendly. And, the zoo now has sensory friendly options and things like that. So I think we're getting to a space where we understand that inclusion means that all spaces have the ability to accommodate, but not just accommodate, that it's welcome. And I think that's where a lot of, like you said, that confidence building through whether it's trips or family activities or things like that comes in, where we say, like, yes, there is space here, and things like that. And I think that's a thing, no matter what the disability is, that's so important that we just all have that space at our tables.
And I think our generation of parents are doing a good job, as you mentioned, about inclusion, but we still worry about saying the wrong thing. And when I met all of you at the center, I flat out said, are there things I should not say, not with any malintent, but just because it comes across so wrong when I really didn't think it would. So for the broader audience, when we meet someone who does see and navigate the world differently, whether they read in Braille or use a stick to walk with, are there things we should be doing, we shouldn't be doing? What advice do you have for the greater population?
Yeah, Julie, I'll start and then you get to jump in. I think the two easiest ones, very practical ones, are ask. If you think somebody needs help, ask them first. They might be good. They might not need it. Or they might be like, yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you. And the other is if somebody has a guide dog, don't talk to it and don't pet it if it's working. If it has that harness on, we know you love dogs. Just leave it be.
Really good advice.
Those are two big practical ones. Otherwise, I think it's a lot of following their lead. We use a lot of person-first language. So we will say a person with a visual impairment, not a visually impaired child. However, every individual has their own comfort level. So if they identify as a blind artist, you can call them a blind artist. What are some other... we use words like look and see, and that's okay. You don't have to say, oh, did you see? Ooh, sorry. It's completely fine. That's just normal terminology. You're not going to offend anyone.
Yeah, I think honestly, it's probably more important that you aren't kind of too worried, I think that's one thing. Like I said, I'm an occupational therapist, very, very passionate about the disability community. And that's one thing that has changed in the last few years is a lot of people are more like, no, I am disabled. That's okay to say. But like you said, it's taking someone's lead. It's allowing them to make the definitions and not being too kind of, because people pick up on that when you're like, oh, I'm going to treat you like you're fragile or that kind of thing. Especially in this situation, we're talking about kids.
Right.
We're talking about kids. And I think that's the biggest thing is don't be so worried about getting it right that you end up kind of othering people. And not just allowing them to be. So, I think it can be really tempting sometimes to be like, wow, look at all the things they've overcome and you're so strong and things like that. And it's like, would you tell another 2-year-old that they're strong? Like maybe yeah, you have big muscles, but I think it's like allow them to have their experience, but allow them to just be a person, whether it's a kid, like the kid who just wants to play. They don't need your admiration, even if they're doing things that are admirable. They don't need to be your inspiration, even if they feel inspiring to you. It's allowing them to just be. And I think that's really important. And I think you'll act the most naturally if you're allowing people to just be. The other thing that I always emphasize to both my children is how wonderful supports are, right? You mentioned the eye patch earlier, glasses, for some children, it's wheelchairs, walkers, all of those kind of things. Because of the language in our house, I remember my son came home when he started first grade and he was like, so-and-so has leg braces and so-and-so just got off their walker and all this kind of stuff. And, all of these things. And he sees the excitement that I have around access is more important than how we all get there, and that kind of thing. And so I think just kind of like taking away some of the stigma of that and allowing those things to just be a part of daily life. I think it's so important. I mean, we see ads now that people are using devices and things like that, but the more we all kind of just say that's part of daily life. So, your child might at some point say, Mommy, why is so-and-so in a wheelchair? It's not important what their diagnosis is. It's important to say, that wheelchair helps them get around. Isn't it so great that they can be there? And do you see that ramp? This building, these people who own this building think it's important that they can be here. So that's why that ramp is here. And just pointing out accessibility and that it is something that we want, right? And we don't want to like tell children it's something we don't talk about. Right? Because then it does become this other thing. And it's like, no, that's great. Wonderful. I love her purple wheelchair. Like, and that kind of thing. And just really allowing people to just be in spaces.
I love all of that. And it's so funny how early kids do pick up on it. My little boy's 3, and we did come across someone using a wheelchair, and that is how I handled it. And then we, again, saw another person using a wheelchair, and he said, look, Mommy, that person is using their wheels to get around. I know. Isn't it great? Yeah. Our generation of moms, that's a good, they're doing a good job. We're doing a good job. My mom always did a good job with that, too. She's listening right now, so Mom, thank you. 2 moms who are doing amazing things. You mentioned, as we wrap this up, you always need volunteers. Who would be a great volunteer for DGC Kids?
People that like kids.
That would help. Number 1, yes.
No, we are so open. We'll provide training on tandem bike riding if you want to do tandem bike riding. We provide training on how to interact with kids with visual impairment. But like Julie said, they're just kids. So if you like kids and you have some spare time, reach out.
Well, I think there's so many opportunities, whether it's support at the center, for groups or things like that, or supporting at events. There's so many different types of opportunities that I think if someone is looking for a volunteer opportunity, DGC Kids can probably find a space for them.
We probably can. Yes.
And that kind of thing. And I think it is one of those things that, as you mentioned, it's fundraising and all of those things, and those volunteers are really the backbone of making sure that the services are so accessible, and that we can continue for
another 75
years
plus.
Yes.
to provide this. So
it's a really big deal. DGCKids.org. Give them a call. Check out their website. Drive by their amazing building there on Big Bend. Ladies, thank you so much for giving us so much of your time. And I'll see both of you next Saturday at the gala. Yes. Let's do this. Friends, thank you for being here for another episode of Live with Laura. Until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for learning. And thank you for being Live with Laura.